What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Too Much to Watch. I'm your host, Sean, and today we're going to do a follow-up to my previous video. The previous one I did was my top 5 overrated movies. I'm going to follow that up here with my top 5 underrated movies. Now, again, this, to me at least, they're underrated again. Some of these do have good Rotten Tomato scores, do have good reviews, did receive some acclaim, but sometimes, to me, I think movies kind of tend to me, an underrated movie also tends to be one that kind of is forgotten with time. There's some directors and some actors where movies stick with them for a long time. Scorsese's on here, and movies follow him on my list. I'll talk to him, but movies tend to follow him. Goodfellas, Casino, and rightfully so. Those are classics within their genre. But sometimes people make movies that, to me at least, get forgotten after a while, and shouldn't. They should be kind of up there with their classics, considered to be part of their classics, or at least to be in discussion, especially when you talk about production value and acting and writing and things like that. And some movies just kind of come and go. Some movies may have the acclaim, but then or should be given awards and aren't, and kind of gone by the wayside, and that's a shame. So these are, to me at least, my top 5 most underrated. Again, underrated to me can mean something different to you, but these are the ones that mean a lot to me and I think should be still talked about. So my number 5. Now, this is not one of those movies that deserved awards or acting kudos or writing kudos, but a movie that kind of generally got trashed on when it came out, and I liked from the get-go. Hopefully maybe now could get a little bit more praise, and I think it does, but it was an older movie, and that's Last Action Hero. That movie is always, to me, was a ton of fun, and even as I got older, the action, and granted it's 90s action, take that for what you will, but it's Schwarzenegger movies, but with fourth wall breaking. It pokes fun at action movies at that time. You gotta like when movies do that. Movie within a movie, or movie commentary on movies being made. But to me at least, this is a ton of fun. With the fourth wall breaking, with the kid going into the movie, with him, they making fun of Stallone, making fun of himself. It's an action movie making fun of action movies with great action. Even back in the day, good car chases, a good villain, a clever concept of a kid being obsessed with movies and getting pulled into a movie with his favorite action star. So it generally got trashed even back then. I'm sure it still does in some circles, but I think it definitely needs another rewatch, and a little bit more appreciative of kind of what they were trying to do. So I still love it, and I think it absolutely needs to be watched. My number 4 movie, underrated movie, is Constantine with Keanu Reeves. Recently, I've seen some things. I know it had a milestone, and forgive me, I can't recall the year milestone that it hit. But Constantine is a movie that a comic book movie back when comic book movies weren't the best. I know we're definitely in a phase in our lives now when you're generally excited to go see a comic book movie. They're putting writers and directors together, writers and consulting and bringing them in house with people that created the comics. So you're getting a continuity of writing, and you're getting a continuity of people that wrote the comics are consulting and are writing on movies to make them, more believable, but also sticking with the source material. Back then, you didn't have that. You threw up an action movie with a cartoon or a comic book character in it. They didn't hit. You can go see Daredevil. with Ben Affleck, obviously some of the Batman movies, the later Batman movies before Nolan took over. But Constantine was a dark comic book movie, and definitely got trashed and definitely was forgotten. But a great Keanu Reeves performance, really a lot of fun of a movie, hitting some different themes. Obviously, you know what Constantine is, but hitting a dark theme with demons and monsters and things like that, and hell and heaven and angels and demons. But a really fun movie, and I definitely think it definitely needs a rewatch. He's Keanu's made a comeback as of late with John Wick's and Bill and Ted based the music and just kind of a general Keanu sans, if you will. But again, needs to go back and rewatch this because I think it has a cult following. It always had a cult following. And again, one of the articles I'd recently seen and read was we need to apologize to the makers of Constantine because it was actually quite a good movie, and definitely hit the themes that it was trying to hit. So definitely an underrated movie. Hopefully it gets the praise now, or definitely gets at least rewatchability now than it used to. Number 3, gonna stick with a comic book movie again. Gonna stick with the MCU. Number 3, underrated, is The Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton. The Incredible Hulk obviously gets replaced with Bruce Banner gets replaced with Mark Ruffalo. Mark Ruffalo has been a great Bruce Banner, been a great Hulk. To me, at least, this was a great movie. I've definitely, if you compare it to the I think it was 2002, the Ang Lee, Eric Bana Hulk, gets a lot of hate. I can get it. I don't hate it like others, but I can definitely see the problems with it. And when they made the MCU, this I believe is the second of the MCU movies, and a great one. Doesn't get talked about enough. Early MCU can be a little rough. Eventually I'll do some stuff on here about the MCU, go through all those movies and do talk about phases and stuff. Obviously this had some troubled production if you kind of know a little bit about what happened. Edward Norton wanted a little more creative control, especially if they were going to continue to do sequels. You really haven't seen you have not seen a true sequel to that movie since then, and for reasons. There's obviously some studio reasons as well. There was some Universal owning Hulk as well. But the tension of Edward Norton and the filmmakers definitely hurt this movie a little bit. But this movie doesn't get talked about enough in the pantheon of the MCU, I think. You have Abomination in there. You've got good performances by Tim Roth. You've got... it's really a good movie, and I don't think it gets enough credit. It definitely touches a little bit on kind of what happened back then with him going away and being in isolation early in the movie. He obviously comes back. You get the continuity of it too, which is great with the MCU kind of forming at that time with General Ross. And so I think within the MCU, it's incredibly underrated. It does not get talked about, especially because I believe it has some scars with the Edward Norton stuff, obviously why you see that. But definitely needs another look. We always go back to Iron Man and Phase 1, and Iron Man 2 is a little bit rough. But you go back to Iron Man in that one, and you go back and talk about Chris Evans and the first Avenger. But kind of generally, that one gets forgotten, and I don't think it should. I definitely think it needs a rewatch. Number 2, I looked this up before I did the video. It is rated high, or at least has a decent Rotten Tomatoes score. But this is my number 2 is Martin Scorsese's Gangs of New York. Oh boy, what a movie. Great production value, and I think it doesn't get knocked for that. But it generally has some fairly negative reviews. I think even the positive reviews are pretty much that it's pretty standard of a movie. They talk about production value. They talk about Daniel Day-Lewis's performance. All things that should be reasons why it's a little more elevated. Not knocking Goodfellas or Casino or anything that Martin Scorsese's done. But this one definitely doesn't get talked about nearly enough. You've got Leonardo DiCaprio. You've got Cameron Diaz. Obviously, I said Daniel Day-Lewis, but you've got John C. Reilly. You've got a lot of great performers and really, really sell it and really go hard in this movie. Very brutal movie and a brutal time in American history. Some of these are actual characters based on true events or based on true characters, not necessarily based on a true story, but these were people back in the day that lived that life and lived in New York at the time, and kind of the rising of America and how it came through and what people had to do to survive. But it's a stellar cast, stellar production, stellar directing. And really should be talked about more in the pantheon of Scorsese movies, at least to me. So number 2, Gangs of New York. Watch it. Number 1, I'd look this one up too. It has a very high Rotten Tomatoes score. I think it's 92 currently on Rotten Tomatoes. But for a Coen Brothers film, what happened? A movie called Inside Llewyn Davis. This was Oscar Isaac. Absolutely stellar performance. This is, and granted, I love music. As most people, that's kind of a silly thing to say, but a movie hitting during that time of folk music in the '60s in New York is rife for movie making, and they made a stellar movie of a guy based on a true character. That name Llewyn Davis isn't real, but based on the events and life of a man who just quite didn't make it. And what amazing music, great performances, another stacked cast in there with John Goodman's in there. Again, Oscar Isaac, Justin Timberlake gives a pretty powerful performance. Not powerful, but a good performance. Adam Driver, Carey Mulligan. And just this was supposed to be an Oscar movie. I mean, this came out right at the good Oscar time. I think it was when the year it came out. I believe it came out in December, which is kind of those like, let's get this out for Oscar buzz. No pun intended. Buzz for Oscar buzz. Just kind of almost is forgotten. The music, I know they've done some, when the movie had come out and even after, they had done some collaborations with others. I think the collaboration on the album with it is with Marcus Mumford of Mumford and Sons. They have done some group things with the Punch Brothers and Mumford and Sons and some others, and just great music, and just doesn't get talked about nearly enough. That was a great performance. I think it was supposed to be another one of those like kind of like propelling Oscar Isaac to some stardom. He was already a really good actor. This was one of those that was going to be like an awards defining performance, and just kind of gets forgotten, especially with the Coen Brothers. The Coen Brothers, wonderful filmmakers, have done a lot of great things. And this was one of their best movies they've made, and just kind of gets forgotten. I don't think it should. I think you should watch it. I believe that movie's on Amazon Prime. It's R-rated, not necessarily for kids. So, but I definitely think it's worth a watch if you haven't seen it. I know a handful of people that I know that are movie buffs that haven't seen it. So, definitely think it deserves a watch. Great movie, great performances, great music. So, that's my number 1 underrated movie. Again, as I've said previously, I'd love for you to like, subscribe, and comment about what you think of my list. Am I missing something? I did had some honorable mentions on here. I don't get to those, but there's plenty of movies out there that people think are underrated that deserve watches. So I'd love to hear what yours are. I'd love to hear if I'm wrong. Again, I think these are underrated to me, only necessarily sometimes because they're not talked about enough, and they should be. But again, I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for stopping by today. I appreciate you taking some time to watch this video. Again, let me know what you think. Have a good one. Peace.